I was nervous. Karen, my wife of 11 years, had told me to meet her at the Tumbleweedin at 3 o'clock. I knew that the bar would be pretty much empty at that hour, and whatever it was she had to tell me would have little to do with partying with her. I didn't know how right I was. The TEI was where she and I had met 13 years before. I had a bad feeling. I had suspected that she was cheating on me with a co-worker. I was afraid that this meeting would be where I got the news. There had been signs late nights at the office where she was a secretary to the boss. Disinterested sex, at least with me. New clothes, provocative clothes in her closet, clothes she never wore around me, and much reduced interest in communicating with me. We hardly spoke even at meals, fewer and fewer of which she was ever even home for during the past several months. It had been mostly me and the kids eating and her coming in with some lame excuse and perhaps a dessert from the market for the children. Max 9 and Megan 10. Her disregard for me was one thing and it hurt, but her putting the children on the back burner really pissed me off. There were but few cars in the lot when I pulled into the TI. I had resolved to play it cool if she was going to do and say what I suspected was the case. I suspected it all due to a conversation that I had partially overheard 2 nights before. Yes, okay, I agree Tuesday. Yes, I'll get him there. Well, it was Tuesday and it was 3 o'clock and she had gotten me here. I sat in the car for a few moments thinking, what if she was with the a-hole? What should I do? The advice my dad had laid on me years before came to me. They had served me well more than once in my business. Do nothing, son, unless you know what to do. Say nothing. Let your antagonist figure it out. The less you say, the more he will worry. And if he doesn't worry, then he is vulnerable, and you can make plans to take care of things at a date and time of your choosing. Remember, if you open your mouth, they will know what you're thinking immediately, even if you don't realize it. Just shut up and walk away. Take care of business later, after you have all of the facts and your plans are in place. I smiled. God, how I had loved that man. I knew he was watching over me at that very second. I said a silent prayer of thanks for his advice inside. I saw her sitting at the bar with a man I didn't recognize, but that was not a big surprise. My company, Steinbeck Incorporated, which I had founded 10 years ago, claimed all of my time during the day and had little opportunity to mix with the folks at her place of work. I was an electrical engineer, and my company designed wiring and other electrical schema for a full dozen construction companies needing the services I could provide. I walked over to the two of them. She sensed my presence and turned. "Hello, Mark," she said. Not "hello, honey," no peck on the cheek, just "hello, Mark." Honey," I said. And I said it pointedly, "What's up?" The man turned and faced me. "Mr. Steinbeck, or would you prefer I call you Mark?" We brought you here today to let you know that your wife and I have been having sex together for some time. She has made it clear that she is tired of sneaking around and having to make excuses, so I convinced her to just simply tell you. As I have said, I was halfway prepared for this, and the recorder in my jacket pocket gave me an edge. I hoped I was getting it all. I waited. I said nothing. After all, Dad was watching, and I didn't want him mad at me for being stupid. Mark, said Karen, waiting for me to say something, but I remained silent. She must have decided I was in shock or something, so she started talking. "Mark, it has been so hard keeping this from you. I don't want you to feel hurt. I have no intention of leaving you. It's just, well, sex with Jason here is just too much for me to give up. I hope you can understand. I just can't keep this from you any longer." "You deserve to know," she said. I wasn't sure just how aware she was of how stupid her argument sounded. Karen had not finished college for obvious reasons. But I had never considered her actually dumb until that moment. As for the military genius she was trading me in for, well enough. Said I walked to the end of the bar where the barkeep was trying not to hear what he couldn't help but hear. I ordered what was on tap. He brought it. I sipped it, saying nothing. The two of them watched me. I could see confusion on both of their faces. I finished my beer and left. I could feel their eyes following me as I exited the building. I felt good for the first time in months. I felt that I had the upper hand. I might have been imagining it, but it was definitely how I was feeling. I went directly home. The kids would be waiting for me. I kissed the kids hello and laughed and told them it was going to be a good weekend for them. They and cheered, and we went to get ice cream. And I told them of my plan, which I had formulated earlier that day. They would be staying with their Aunt Susan and Uncle Dak. For the weekend, they loved my sister and brother-in-law, and Sue and her husband, an ex-Army Ranger, had been unable to conceive. Hence, Max and Megan had become their favorite people in the whole wide world. I knew that Sue and Doc were going camping for the weekend, and now the kids were going to be going with him. That would give me the chance I needed to handle the things that had to be handled, everything. Okay, Mark said. Dak, the man had an uncanny knack for picking up on things. Truthfully, no, I said. I'm divorcing Karen, the kids don't know, so I figured he said that brought me up short. What I've noticed, some things he said, so has Sue Karen actually made a play for me last Christmas? I blew her off and she made a joke about it, trying to cover herself, but she couldn't sell it, not to me. Sue made me not tell you sorry. I didn't know it's okay. I'm just grateful you guys are here to take care of the kids for a couple of days. I need time to get my ducks all lined up. Listen, Mark, if you need me for anything, thanks, Doc. I'll keep it in mind, but I think I can handle this. It'll be messy, but I have evidence, and this is not a no-fault state, so nailing them shouldn't be a problem after I leave here. I'm heading over to Henry's to get things underway. Henry Morgan was my company's more than competent attorney. He was, by all accounts, at least 120 years old, but still sharp as a razor blade. He knew every judge and every worthwhile attorney in the state, let alone in the city. Karen couldn't have not realized what I was capable of doing if I found her cheating. I had to figure that she had come forward with all of this. I have a sex buddy stuff in order to short-shank anything I might do if I were to discover them by accident. It was very faulty reasoning, but the more I considered it, the more it made the only possible sense. She was scared I would find out and sandbag her. Well, I was going to do just that. Yeah, Henry, that's about it. I had come to his home unannounced and had surprised him. I had given him the recording in the name of the barkeep who had been a witness to the bizarre meeting with my wife and her sex buddy only hours earlier. Okay, I will have them both served on Monday. Are you going home? He asked. Yes, I guess. So I don't want to tip her too soon. I will be kicking her out as soon as you tell me they've been served, okay? Malcolm will interview the witness and get him to sign an affidavit tomorrow, even though it's Sunday speed wins in this business. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and leave them bewildered and sucking dust. I always say he said I like the way this man thought, and Mark, yes, sorry about your marriage, and especially about Max and Megan. Anything you need, thanks, Henry, I appreciate it. I left. Feeling very, very good. I had an ex-ranger and a real nasty-ass lawyer running point. Now all I had to do was sit back and let the hit the fan. I had told Henry to deny her anything whatsoever she was to get nothing. He said it wouldn't be a problem with any other lawyer. I knew I would probably have to give her half of everything but her actions. As proved by the recording, according to Henry, would give him the leverage to crush her in court if Henry said it. It was true. That was something I knew to be absolutely certain. I was feeling better and better. As I drove home for possibly the last weekend I would be spending with my soon-to-be ex-wife arriving home, I was shocked to see a strange car in the driveway. It had to be Jason's. It was getting dark. I wondered if I would be lucky enough to get a pic or two of the lovers. I parked a couple of houses down and snuck up to the house as unobtrusively as I could. The lights were out. As I neared the house, I saw Rex Duar, my next-door neighbor, pulling the trash chute to the curb. Rex was a cop. I stood directly beside the strange car and looked at him. He saw me and waved. I nodded. He'd seen the car. I was glad it was yet another witness. I noted the asshole's plate number. I would give it to Henry tomorrow, along with Rex's name and address and maybe a couple of pics if I could get him. I entered the backyard as though going to get my trash bins to bring them out. Rex had gone back in by then, so I could still try and sneak in and get my pics. They were in the front room. I pulled out my cell and shot them through the sliding glass doors at the back. Thank God for modern cell phones. He was doing her from behind. While she knelt on the couch, I got about 10 pictures, put away my cell, and entered noisily through the sliding glass door. They heard me. The two turned, looked at me, and continued doing what they were doing. I went upstairs. The nerve, I thought I see it. But I waited. About 15 minutes later, I heard the front door downstairs open and close, and then the roar of the a-hole's engine as he drove off. I waited for a minute or two more, and then went back downstairs, heading for the kitchen. I heard the shower running. As I passed the downstairs bathroom, I poured myself a cup of coffee and waited. This was going to be interesting. 10 minutes later, she came and joined me. You okay? She asked. Her voice was kind. I didn't say anything. I just sipped the coffee and waited for her to say something meaningful. It concerned me that she didn't even think to ask after the kids. This woman was not the woman I had married more than a decade past. Mark, we have to talk. The kids are at my sister's. Thought you might like to know what. Oh, yes, I noticed they weren't here when I got home. She looked flustered now. Look, are you okay? I just wanted to be upfront and honest with you. I didn't like sneaking around. You're a good man and you deserve better. It's just sex, Mark. Only sex. I will deny you nothing when we are together. And Jason knows that and is okay with it. Heck, a good man, it was his idea not to hide things from you anymore. I couldn't resist. Sorry, Dad. So I can have sex with my lawfully wedded wife, and Jason is okay with that. Damn, that's very nice of him. No need to be sarcastic. Mark, honesty is always the best policy. You know, she said she actually said that, evidently breaking her wedding vows was an exception to the rule. I had to smile. I couldn't help it. Mark, damn it, say something, she commanded. What do you want? Want me to say if I said to call him and tell him it's over, would you? Well, then there is nothing to say, but yes, you were right. I deserve better. I was laughing inside, but my outward demeanor was calm, even reflective. You're not a cock or whatever. She said, you're my husband and a good daddy, and I love you and save it. Karen, I'm going out. Don't wait up for me. I had to get out of there. I couldn't stand to be near her. She was dead to me. Monday. It would be all over and she would, well, be history. I retraced my steps of earlier in the day. I was back at the Tumbleweed and the same barkeep was on duty. I bellied up and took my place at the end of the bar. The place was crowded now, especially for a Tuesday night. I ordered a tap and asked the guy what gives, I said, indicating the crowd. Ladies' night and the wolves are out. He nodded toward the far corner. The lighting was dim, but I saw him. Jason was making out with one of the ladies, so the cheater was cheating on the other cheater. Why was I not surprised? Or maybe he wasn't cheating on the other cheater. Maybe the other cheater knew he had other interests. I overheard that earlier today. Man, if you need a witness, thanks. Maybe I will. I said my wife pulled that on me too a few years ago. But I didn't have anybody to stand with me, so I got rimmed pretty bad in court about to keep this place, though, so that was something. I guess it would actually be good if half of what I make didn't go to alimony. We talked off and on for the next 4 hours straight. I made a mental note to talk to Henry about maybe getting this guy some justice if he helped me nail Romeo and Juliet. Us suckers had to stick together. Jason never noticed me at the bar. I had managed to get some good shots of him and his little chickie. I would use them to show my wife if indeed she thought she was exclusive with him, but that would have to wait till after the big show on Monday. I got home around 4 in the morning. Josh, the barkeep, and I had had a half-dozen cups of Joe after closing. He lived upstairs from the bar, and so he had nowhere to go. And since he was living alone, I guess I was a good candidate for late-night conversation. I liked the guy, plus he was a damn good bartender, a major plus. In my view, I was pissed at Karen, but I wanted to sleep in my bed, not in the damn guest room. There's something about a man's own bed. It's something that my wife knew about me, and that might be why she'd have sex in front room instead, upstairs. I slid in beside her. She was awake. I felt her hand reach for me. I jerked it off me and just rolled over and slept. She evidently did the same. The light streaming in through the cracks between the window curtains woke me. It was almost 8 o'clock. I could smell bacon frying in the kitchen. I got up, showered, dressed, and went downstairs. She was in a good mood. I guess she thought that everything was all right, or at least that our marriage was not terminal. Hi, sleepyhead morning, I said, smells good. Well, it did. I was hungry. It might be the last day of our married life, but I didn't have to be all mopey about it. Though it hit the fan tomorrow, but today was going to be a good day. I just knew it. I'll be here all day today for you. She said it like it was a special favor to me since I was being so reasonable. Oh, yes. And if you're good, you might get really lucky. She said she was actually giggling. I didn't know whether to laugh or be sick to my stomach. How could this cheating witch of a wife actually think that I would consciously accept what she was selling? I just giggled back at her. I have to take my car into the shop later this morning, have to have new brakes put on. Oh, I thought we might maybe later. I had to figure a way to avoid her, and it wasn't going to be easy. I really didn't want to stick my wick in her, but I supposed I could endure it if I absolutely had to keep her off balance just before leaving to get the brake job, which incidentally had not been a lie. I had my little voice-activated recorder near the kitchen phone. I figured if she called him, that would be the phone she'd use. I was right. God, how I loved the intrigue. 3 hours later, I was back. I retrieved the recorder while she was taking the trash out, and I went into my office to hear what might have been caught on it. It was hurtful when I heard her say she loved him. Mighty hurtful it was, especially so, since I knew he didn't give a damn about her. I couldn't wait to show her the dated pics I got of him and his chickie the night before that would put a crimp in her style. "Hi, it's me. Yes, Ian's gone out to do something on the car." "I don't know, Jason. He might not want to." Yes, I will try. He loves me so." "Maybe, but okay, I understand. I just don't want to lose him. I don't know, maybe we went AAR shoving it in his face like that." "I know, but okay. Okay, bye, I love you too." I sat there in my office in a state of wonder. I had married a... It was embarrassing. I wasn't sure now if I even should divorce her. How could anyone that stupid be held responsible for her actions? No, the hurt was too deep. Dean, your face audacity of the pair made any kind of reconciliation impossible. And then there were the children. She clearly didn't give a damn about them. Unforgivable. I was up and out of the house before she even awoke the next morning. It was Monday, and soon it would be the living-in for her and her lover. I first went to the office to let my secretary, Beth, know I would be out for the rest of the day. Being the boss had its upside. First stop was Henry's office. He had news Malcolm, his part-time pie, had gotten some stuff. Per Romeo, he was married, had 6 kids, believe it or not, and his wife had the money and the family, a house Frau 10 years a senior. She apparently had no clue as to his F-landings. I instructed Henry to take him down big time and also gave him my latest recording and with the pics he smiled at that. I also mentioned to him that I might have a special job for him and Malcolm after the dust settled. I knew that Sue and Doc would get the kids off to school. It was having to talk to them later in the day that was scaring me, but there was nothing for it. It had to be done. Henry had set it up for the 2 lovers to be served at work. There was a restraining order against her coming back to the house and against him as well. The papers were set to be delivered just before lunchtime. I asked Henry to make sure it done as loud, and with as much fanfare as possible. I wanted the 2 lovers to heard also. I had asked that he make any and all evidence against the pair available to Jason's wife. What she did with it would be up to her. God, how I wanted to be there when my wife was serving. And then I thought, why not? I was in the hall when the server arrived. I didn't know him and he didn't know me, so he just walked right past me to the office where my wife worked, the boss's office. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Karen Steinbeck?" "Why?" "Yes, I am," she said, smiling. I was watching from the doorway and she didn't see me at first, since she was turned to speak with the server. He handed her a manila envelope. "You're served?" Her face clouded. She looked at the envelope she held in her hand and opened it. She ped and began to cry. Then she fell into her chair. Her boss at that moment was coming out, saw, and tried to console her. I made myself more visible. She saw me and her eyes shot open. "Mark, why? I couldn't resist. Sorry again, Dad. Like you said, I deserve better," and I walked out. I wasn't present, but I heard later that Jason had been served in like fashion. He actually fainted as the realization that his life was essentially over sunk in. He eventually lost everything, wife, kids, house, job. Everything I had been wrong about. One thing. Karen was not the world's biggest. She was only the second biggest. A few days later, I sat in Henry's office and sipped the hot brew. "So do you think you can help him since it's so long after the fact?" "Yes, I think so. The lady has a lot of skeletons in her closet, and she is more than willing to revisit the conditions of their divorce in order to keep them hush-hush. Get the alimony dumped. I mean, if you can, Mark, don't you know by now that I can do anything?" He laughed. "I stand corrected," I said, joining him and laughing. Late that day, I sat at the bar in the Tumbleweed talking with my new friend Gus. He said, "If what you say is true, you will never have to pay for another tap in here again. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, especially since she rubbed my nose in it so bad at the time. Glad I could help." I said Karen ended up with nothing from our marriage but miracle of miracles. She was not fired. She'd been with her boss for so long that he let her indiscretion slide. This once Jason was history. As previously related, I met with Karen the day after the big show. I had something I wanted to give her. I knew I risked having to listen to her beg and plead, but this one was worth that risk. Mark isn't there some way. I mean, the children, that was a card I knew she was going to play, and I shot her down. You have shown no interest in the children in months. Karen, that boyfriend of yours has had your full attention. Mark, heck, a good man. He's like you in so many ways. I think that's why I fell for him in the first place. He loves me too. That's why we tried so hard to make you understand it was for you that we beat our hearts and souls. Now you have seemed fit to destroy us, all of us. Even the children, how could you? The tears came again this time. She had really pissed me off, making it all my fault. God, I was mad, Mark. It's not too late. There's still in us if you want it. I know I can make Jason understand that you have needs too. You'll still be my number one. You're the father of my children. How could you ever be otherwise? Jason is outside of us, not part of us. I will make you a very happy man if you only give me the chance. I was almost speechless. I couldn't even get mad. This was beyond dumb, stupid, moronic. She actually believed her try. She needed help. But somebody else was going to have to provide it. She was history to me. Karen, I came here today to see you for 2 reasons. 1, I'm going to allow you unrestricted visitation with the children, but never your lovers. I'm going to give you some money to get you into a new starter apartment, but then you will have to F for yourself. The condition for this large S on my part is that you do not in any way contest the divorce. If you do, I will come at you with everything I have, and Karen, you have no idea what I am capable of. Am I clear so far? She stared at me. It was clear she had hoped against hope that I would take her back and that I would be okay with her keeping on with world-class number 1 like I say she is going to need help. Number 2 are these. I pushed manila folder toward her. Please check the dates at the bottom of the photographs. I said they were the photos I'd taken Saturday night of Jason and his chickie. She pulled them out and stared. But these are from last Saturday night. You are not his true love. You never were. Heck, a player. Have a nice life. I said I rose, threw a 20 on the table for the waitress and left. She was shedding the tears of the despairing as I exited the building. I've been married for 15 years. 3 kids, Michael, Jason, and Marcy Nicehouse, 2 newish cars, and a wife that can afford to work for a nonprofit, because we really don't need the money. I have a job that interests me, and the workload has dropped in the last 4 years. Reasonable hours, occasional travel for work and pleasure. I thought I had it made, wife, family, 2-car garage in a good school district. What more could you want until I came in from work, and my wife Andrea was sitting in the kitchen looking nervous. Hey, what's up with you? What's wrong? Are the kids all right? Her face contorted. They're fine, Jeffrey, but I've got some really, really bad news to deliver. I'm leaving you to marry James Pannon. It's nothing you did. There's nothing you can do to change my mind. I've emptied my closet and bureau. Everything else is yours. I felt my gut roll. Who the hell is James Pannon? What's he got that I haven't? You love him. I do love him. We've been seeing each other for about a year. He's the governor's cousin from the side of the family that inherited most of the family fortune. The children and I will move in with him in Greenville, Delaware. That Buchanan, I can hardly believe it. You've been screwing him for a year, and I never had a clue. I was stunned. The world as I know it is gone. It's true then, the husband is the last to know. Well, I guess I made it easy for you. Me trusting you implicitly. Are the children mine? Of course they are. How could you think that of me? Oh yes, they yours. She was Nick-looking, but not a stunner, and nothing out of the ordinary in bed unless she must have worked a lot harder to please him than she ever did with me. But what's the point? The pain was turning to a bitter anger, but I was able to keep control of myself. I guess I've been screwing a million dual escort? I glared at her, jumped to my feet, and gestured towards the door. Well, get the hell out of my house and don't let the door hit you on the way out, you goddamn cheating witch. Enjoy the good life until he dumps you for someone younger. I have nothing more to say to you. She tossed an envelope on the table and moved quickly out the door, and I sat and cried. I went upstairs to lie down and saw that the children's rooms had been emptied out, including the pictures they had hung on the walls. It felt like I was living in a tomb in the weeks to follow. She and James Buchanan refused to let me talk with my kids. It was Macy who snuck out and knocked on my door. We worked out a clandestine meeting arrangement. I got 6 burner phones and gave the kids one of the numbers. Every couple of weeks I gave them a new number, so if anyone checked their phones, my numbers were only called occasionally. We were careful about emails, which could only be sent from the library computers or a friend's computer. I used the name Lenny Elmore, after Elmore Leonard, the wonderful author, as my email name again to hide from my ex. So I kept up with their lives, not as often as I would like. Well, Macy called every other day, usually on a friend's phone, and the boys about once or twice a week in the months that follow. It didn't get better. Words cannot describe the fury, hurt, depression that washed over me, that was drowning me. Andrea had traded up in marriage, so far up that she didn't bother to ask for any of our assets, alimony, or child support. There was no point, I guess, to her credit. She asked for nothing of any commercial value, but what she did take was priceless. My 3 children, we sometimes read stories where a woman is offered $1 million to have sex with some guy. Usually it's women. We wonder about the assumption being that most guys would do it for free. The goofy part of that question is who would pay $1,000,000 for sex, especially for sex with an average person. I guess that Buchanan has tens of millions of dollars, so I can see. Her bailing for that, who knows? Maybe it was love. I can say for sure I wouldn't have run off with a Mrs. Buchanan, but I suppose you don't know until someone offers and the kid's too hiding contact with me. I guess it's the money too, the promise of a free Ivy League educations along with the more immediate pleasures of the lifestyle big money can bring. Cars, clothes, skiing in Aspen, summer in France doesn't compare with surf fishing at the Jersey Shore with Pop. But neither does it excuse my children for not insisting on having a foot in each camp. I thought I brought them up better than that. But then they are kids. The biggest thing was still, what the hell did Buchanan see in her? She really didn't stand out in any crowd. I could imagine she was middling in about everything. She was really good with people, but so are a lot of people, as to our friends most stayed cordial. But now being single, occasionally I was asked to a party, and I did have a couple of buddies to fish with. But I was really lonely without my best friend, and I felt like damaged goods, which I thought of suing them. But my lawyer told me to forget it, that I really didn't have a chance. And for what? I make good money, $130,000 a year, which is a nice living, but against Buchanan. So I caved and tried to get on with my life, like I said, in that wrenched first year. I really had a hard time. My home was now just a house, functionally. I was on the very edge of my children's lives. I wasn't fit to date women either. Really, it was my daughter that got me through that horrible year. I kept it together by immersing myself in work. I mean, what else could I do? I felt sorry for myself, buried in self-pity, rolled in misery like a dog. And for almost a year, after 6 months of that, I sold the damn house and got an apartment in town, cut way back on overtime, and began to flesh out ideas I had come up with over the years, but were ignored by the elderly guys in management. I realized I was a better businessman, that the fools running the company ever see clearly the way for the business to grow and prosper, but the management couldn't let go of the old business model they developed years ago, which successfully built the business, but was wrong for today's world and was taking it down. It was like I was sailing on the Titanic with me, the only one who could see the iceberg. What could you do besides dress warmly and stand near the lifeboats reading the launch instructions? My job search was producing nothing until out of the blue I got a job interview from a company that bought one of our smaller competitors. They wanted me to implement my employer's old business model so they could grow their company in a series of interviews. I pointed out the problems with that and outlined my own ideas. They were actually willing to pay a premium to lure me away from Titanic Incorporated, and more besides, because their business was in Chestertown, Maryland. I was able to negotiate a big vacation package by agreeing to take most of 1 day a week in a contract tied to business growth and profits. Apparently, they had had trouble getting people to relocate to a backwater, charming or not. Chestertown is as chaotic in the summer as it is dead in the winter. I jumped at the chance to make a clean break of it, changed my email address, got a new phone number. Of course, my children knew, but not their mother. Of course, in this age of the internet, if you live your life, you cannot really disappear, but I thought of it as a way to reinvent myself, as neither my former employer nor my former wife valued me, and it helped to put them in the fuzzy light of the past. Now, I didn't get big-time rich like Buchanan, but I did real well by my standards. And as the business took off, I was able to hire talented young people to implement the business plan. After a few years, I found myself with a nice equity position and began working from home a lot and let others do the day-to-day stuff. I rented a place for a while until I found a big 3-bedroom craftsman-style bungalow on a lot with a view. But within walking distance of Chestertown, the big demand here is for old historic homes. But houses from the 1920-1930 are modern houses, and pretty reasonably priced as a bonus. It had $20,000 of woodworking tools in a heated garage that the old guy bought new when he retired, but never got around to learning how to use. I joined the local historical society, volunteered for this and that, put myself out there, as they say, but unfortunately the selection of suitable mates was thin. I was 45 years old, relatively few single women in the 35 to 40 age group, and of the few of a suitable age, well, I'll get shot for saying this, but the education level of the year-round residents was mixed, and the summer people were generally too high and for my taste. One of the members of the Historical Society asked me if I could fix an electrical problem on his boat. I liked the old guy, so he and I spent Saturday on the boat, and I fixed a plethora of assorted problems. We took it out for a short cruise, and I found I liked sailing and he liked company, so he taught me sailing. We worked out a trade. I'd keep all the mechanical SL electrical stuff running. He's pay someone to the endless cosmetic restoration and cleaning. And I could take it out more or less, it will. I just had to call in advance if it was a day sale often, as not we would go out together. I should tell you that I could have bought the damn boat, but I'm cheap. And who wants the expense of owning and maintaining a boat? I was at the marina, changing the oil in the auxiliary engine, and heard hoots and shrieks as a boat was a nepple wallowing up to the dock. I grabbed a boat hook and trotted over. Seeing the run of the tide, I called for the stern rope. They threw it short. But I could just hook it and pull the stern to the dock, whereupon and the tide pushed the bow so I could catch that rope which was dragging in the water and tied them fast. The idiot at the wheel was drunkenly insisting I join their party for dinner at one of the expense account restaurants nearby. I had no interest in spending the evening with a bunch of honking drunks, and politely demurred when a really good-looking woman came up beside Captain Rum. "Don't be put off by Wallace. I would like you to come to dinner with us. After all, you rescued us so much you can infer from Ascension." She was sober, no rings on her left hand, Nick-looking educated, faint British accent with a body built for comfort. "Now would you be sitting alongside me at dinner?" Hoots of teasing laughter from the boat. He hooked the boat, and you hooked him. Way to go. Heather, we were smitten with each other. Heather was 7 years younger than me, worked in a law office in Washington, D.C., writing laws and regulations for lobbyists. She was a gorgeous thing. Not Hollywood gorgeous, but somebody I certainly would pick out of a crowd. As we talked, I found she shared my politics, love of old things, the water, and reading. She couldn't have children, which bothered her years ago when she got the news, but over the years became reconciled with it, me, after the experience I had with Mind that didn't bother me at all. "Heather, I don't want this night to end. No strings here. Would you stay at my house? I have a guest bedroom with a locking door. Not that you need to got your driver's license with you. Give it to me." I handed it over. She took a picture of it with her phone, emailed it there. "If I don't come back in one piece, my mother will come after. Can you drive me to Waldorf Sunday night?" "Sure, where's Waldorf? No cows around the restaurant." But I waved to a couple of older women I knew fairly well who were just leaving, and I asked them if they could drop us off at the marina where my car was. One of them had set me up with 2 blind dates, and was delighted to see I was sweet on Heather after the introductions to Grant Yulia, who prefers to be called Lily. They teased Heather. Lily started in Jeffrey as a real asset to Chestertone. I tried to fix him up with a local girl or two, but my mistake was not being able to find anybody who looks as lovely as you. We want to keep him here. So when you marry him, you have to agree to live here," Grace chimed in. "He can cook, fix anything, and has a good income. Plus, he's nice to sweet old ladies." Heather gave it right back. "Well, if he's been rejected by all of the young women around here, maybe I should be careful. They must know something I don't, Lily, or more likely you recognize what you've got there, B, regularly. But a very disheveled dresser. He does need taken care of, ladies. Please. I just met Heather this afternoon. You scare her away. We didn't have sex that weekend, but the next weekend we took the boat out and we drilled like rabbits as both of us were ending a long dry spell. Physically, she was the opposite of my ex-wife. The ex was short, skinny, and blonde. Heather was almost as tall as me, nicely rounded body and jet black-haired. She was English, her father from Avery, England, and her mother from Madras, India. Best of all, we laughed at each other's jokes. Unfortunately, she was also the polar opposite of my ex-wife in not-so-good ways. Andrea was willing to try anything you ever read about or saw in a spicy film, and willing to do it a lot. Heather liked sex, but she was pretty uptight. I was puzzled because she talked a good game, but was really limited in bed. And it wasn't getting any better. I had no trouble getting her to climax, but she thought blowjobs, dirty talk, outdoor sex, and just about everything else was perverted or disrespectful to her personally. I was about to reluctantly toss her back into the dating pool when I got an inspiration one cold, wet day in the fall. We walking into Chesterton one Saturday, and I realized that she was the only woman in the town still wearing sandals. I wondered if she had a foot fetish. I got 2 drinks in her that evening at the restaurant and a glass of wine at the house, so she was pretty laid back, Heather. Some people feel that sex can be gross or humiliating and that loving people should be dignified when in bed together. I think my job is to do for you whatever you enjoy, and that your job is to do for me whatever I enjoy. Jeffrey, don't you like making love with me? What are you talking about? What we do, you and I, is love making? You're good at that, but there's also lusty drilling and sex play, and we haven't done anything like that tonight. I'd like to play at sex, not getting into the details, but we had a grand finish. It was the first lesson I taught her in the pleasurably long and delightful journey of how to give and get great sex this year. The weather was remarkable mild well until October, and our romance was perhaps the happiest time for me in decades. Once a week, weather permitting, we'd sail on Chesapeake Bay. Often it was warm enough to shed our clothes for a while, with then another boat in sight, and have a beer swim and generally screw hard once or twice, and snuggling under a blanket as the boat rocked us to sleep, and then to make love in the cool dawn that fall. We fell in love. Chesterton is 150 years away from D.C. and lifestyle, but only an hour and a half by car. That winter, she sold her Waldorf condo and rented a pie to Tara in D.C., moving in with me in Chesterton. She has a somewhat flexible schedule, and most weeks spend a couple of nights in D.C. and the rest with me. I proofread her stuff, not so much for spelling and grammar, but for clarity and completeness. I would be bullshitting to say that I truly understood everything she wrote, but in the moment I could follow it. And if I couldn't, there was a problem with it. She was a bit more social than me. But I liked people too, and we both enjoyed going out with her friends in town, my near home, and life was good. She had to go into D.C. one Sunday morning to spend the next couple of days preparing for a case, and as it happened, the town council meeting I had attended was over sooner than expected that Monday, so to surprise her, I drove to the apartment, getting there about 9:30, no sign of her, so I called and her phone went to voicemail. I admit having been blindsided by my cheating, which of an ex-wife, it worried me a bit. She returned my call an hour later, saying she was taking a break but would be working half of the night. We chatted, me wondering how to ask her where she was when she volunteered it. This is turning out to be a hell of a week. We found out Sunday that our office didn't do on the federal truck standards. So this morning, we all decamped to the Westin and Fairfax to get it done by 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'll be lucky to sleep at all tonight. The only good news is I'll be able to be back in Chesterton a day early. Oh, good, actually, the council meeting ended early, so I thought I'd surprise you. I'm at the apartment. Oh, you poor thing, spend the night. I should be back about noon, or when we can have lunch. I'd normally take you up on that, but I need to get back, and in the morning, and you'll be exhausted. Honey, I'm so sorry I missed you. At least I'll catch your scent when I slide between the sheets. I'll be missing you. I'll take a long nap at the apartment tomorrow and be home in time for a late supper. I love you. A week later, she said, I realized I have to shut my phone off a lot when I'm in meetings or just so I can concentrate. But then I don't know who was calling, so I got a smartphone for just you and me. We can set it up so you can track me that way. You'll know where I am. I don't need to know that. I trust you. She laughed, and I trust you as well. But I have no secrets from you, and you never know, that phone feature may come in handy sometime for some other reason. So she gave me the gift of knowledge, which wasn't so good for Adam and Eve, but for me. I checked where she was a few times and never bothered again. We had had the biblical 7 years of good luck, and I wondered if it was coming to an end when I opened my door one Saturday morning to be greeted by my ex-wife. I wrinkled my nose and said, "Out dead," to me as I shut the door. Of course, Heather heard what happened. Who is that, my ex-wife? I told her to F off, but now was knocking again on how nice invite her in. I told her she was dead and shut the door on her. Heather glared at me. It's my house too, and you'll be nice to her if only because she's a guest in our house. Things are obviously going very poorly for her, or she wouldn't be here. Heather smiled as she opened the door. My husband tells me you're Andrea. How nice to finally meet you. I'm Heather, by the way. I looked at her more carefully and shivered a little. Andrea was always thin, but now she looked gaunt with sunken eyes and cheeks. My first thought was, what the hell did I ever see in her? And the second had me wondering if she was seriously ill. Andrea looked at me wryly and said, I'm sorry to intrude. I won't be long. Heather slid right in with, don't worry about that. We're staying at home this afternoon. We were thinking of going out, but Jeffrey has some yard work to get done on putting water on. I do. So want to talk with you. Did you have a pleasant drive down? I took the hint and went outside. Call me when the coffees dripped and left them to themselves. It must have been 20 minutes later. Heather called coffees ready. I had put the last quart of oil in the mower and went in the house to clean my hands and pour a coffee. I sat with them as they finished their chatter. Peace came over me. I realized, thankfully, that I had no feelings for Andrea at all. No love, no hate, zero emotions of any consequence. And looking at the two of them, I can honestly say I was well rid of her. The coffee mugs were finally empty. So after all these years, Andrea, I don't suppose this is a social call. No, it isn't. You have two daughters, the youngest is 7 years old and needs a kidney transplant. Jesus, what a bombshell. No, of course I knew she and Buchanan had daughter, but mine can't be. You don't say that's too bad, but as you know, I've never met this child, so why don't you go to Switzerland or wherever money can buy everything and fix her that's got nothing to do with me? So for the second time, why are you here? My husband's shooting blanks and handing me an envelope. I knew you would be doubtful. So I got the DNA reports. I didn't have a sample of your DNA, but all of your children have the same father. She's your flesh and blood. We're having trouble finding a kidney match, and she in total kidney failure. Jeffrey, she won't live all that long, and the doctors think you're likely a match I'm not, or I wouldn't be here. I'm here to ask you to be checked for a match, and if so, to save her life by donating a kidney, I'll pay you anything you ask. Heather saw me starting to go orbital and put her hand on my arm, squeezed hard, and jumped in. We need to discuss this. Why don't you email us the detailed information and we'll discuss it and get back to you every day. She's suffering. Andrea, let me talk to Jeffrey. I'll call you the day after tomorrow, I promise. Heather stood up and rummaged in the desk for one of my business cards as Andrea was leaving. I couldn't help saying sarcastically, it was nice to hear how the number of my ex-child is multiplying. Do let me know if any more pop out. Drive carefully on your way back to where you came from. I shut the door while Heather walked Andrea to the car, talking earnestly. I reheated a cup of coffee, thinking the nerve of the witch to rub her money in my face, and went out to my shop. Heather called me a couple hours later for supper. Well, there's what I'd call a troubled woman. Her child is dying, facing a slow death, and the only best hope is a big-time favor from a guy who hates her, and that weren't enough. Her marriage is shaky, that about sum it up. I don't hate her, I just despise her. And I don't despise her for dumping me, but rather for depriving me of my children and depriving my children of me. She thinks she has it rough facing the loss of a kid. Okay, my kids aren't dead, but they might as well because they aren't really a part of my life. You think the kid's really mine? I doubt she'd lie about that. I imagine you'll find out pretty quickly if they check you for a kidney match. I gotta read up on that. I really don't know nothing about kidney disease transplants or anything like that. You make her any promises, just what you heard me say about calling her Tuesday. The child is stable, but not good, and Jeffrey, I'll support you, whatever. Comes I got looking up on Wikipedia, the National Kidney Foundation website and whatever, and found that the kid eventually dies without a new kidney. There is a huge shortage of kidneys. The best outcome is if the donor is a close match to the recipient. The kid would probably get a transplant at some point, but it would be a miserable time for her until she got one, and she might still die of kidney failure. Sunday night, I poured Heather a glass of the good wine we save for company, not the usual plunk we have on the table. You realize I would love to kick that to the curb and throw her under a bus. She hasn't changed a bit had she not absolutely needed me. She never would have told me about my daughter, but I have to do this, you know that, don't you? This would throw her under the bus or donate a kidney. We both laughed. It broke the tension, love. I wish the kid was okay. I wish your children were part of our lives. And I wish you got to keep both kidneys. But if I had a child, I know I'd do anything I needed to do to save her. And I know you feel the same way. So I understand why you need to give her your kidney. I saw that strength, that courage and loyalty in you before I married you. I was thinking, so she gave us a get-out-of-jail-free card, didn't she? What do we want to come out of all this right now? All the pain and blood is all on me. Well, my daughter too. How can I get the ex and her husband to put some blood in the game? I don't know why you would care. Forget Em. Focus on what you want. Do you know what you really want? No, I never really gave it a thought. Do you? She patted my arm and smiled. You need to answer that question. Not me. I was thinking when my other kids were growing up, I was working so hard to bring home the money working on the house and cars that I didn't get to enjoy my children much, and then they were gone. So here's a daughter I don't know at all. I'd like to be part of her life, have my picture taken standing next to her on prom night. They still have proms, don't they? Heather nodded. I'd like to raise her as I wish I could have raised my older children. That's what I want, Jesus. Jeffrey, you want custody, Sheck. Never give you that. And it would be traumatic for the child, too. I'd be happy to have Karen on a weekend or two. That might work. I think she might give us custody. Remember the judgment of Solomon. 2 women claim a child. Solomon decided to cut the kid in half, 1/2 for each claimant. One woman agreed, the other renounced her claim rather than the child die. Solomon declared her the mother. Andrea will do the same, but I want her to have to work for it, Jeffrey. You don't believe that you can't make custody a condition of donating a kidney for the kid for a kidney. What are you thinking? Lot of thoughts running around in my mind right now. You're right, I can't require custody as a quid pro quo. The kid gets my kidney. But I was thinking, Andrea doesn't have to know that I had worked hard to push the rage out of my heart years ago, and did a good job of it too. But seeing Andrea and the secret child, it came flooding back. I wanted revenge on Andrea too. But I didn't tell Heather that night we worked out the framework of a deal, and one of the lawyers Heather worked with offered to work it up into something nice, legal, and enforceable. Just before we went up to Greenville, I added a page at the end. Took me almost 20 minutes to find the same font the goddamn lawyers used. I wanted everything to match Monday. She called Miriam and set up a family meeting between us. Miriam, her husband James, and my 3 older children, we stipulated that Karen not be present, which was only common sense. I went up the day before for a tissue match, which proved she was my daughter, and that I was an excellent match for a kidney donation. While I was doing all that, Heather spent the better part of the day visiting with Andrea and the children, and they got along quite well the next day. Heather and I sat down with the Buchanans. James was clearly annoyed at the whole thing. Andrea was sick with worry, and my other kids weren't much better. They did look good wearing quality clothing, expensive haircuts. Perfect teeth. Well, I read up on all this, and the Kidney Foundation is a really good charity. I'd like to see them come out ahead on this. So it turns out that you were correct. Andrea Karen is my daughter, and the good news is that I'm a good match to donate a kidney for her, but what you're asking me to do is to undergo major surgery. Pop out one of my kidneys and give it to a stranger, but check your child, said my ex-wife. No, she's the child of James and Andrea Buchanan. I waved towards them. You all left my life abruptly and for good, and none of you ever told me about Karen until you absolutely had to. I have every reason to expect you'll cloister Karen away from me as well, just as soon as you get your pound of flesh out of me, plus this is all on me. Not one of you will have shed a drop of blood, not a minute of pain. I mean, you folks don't have any skin in the game, do you? Sorry, but the continuation of my genes isn't that big a deal in my life. Andrea's face was contorted in anguish. There has to be a way, Wick. Do anything to save her, anything you want. I paused a bit for dramatic effect. What will it take, you ask? Well, 2 things for one. I want some time with my daughter, 72 days a year, 20% her time she'll live with Heather, and Andrea, would you think that's fair, eh? What's that, 2 weekends a month? Well, that'd be 48 days. So at a week or 2 in the summer, that's about 15% of the time. So, okay, I would get her 15% of the time, and you 85% of the time. Okay, so you agree that would be fair. She looked at her husband, who shrugged and said, More than fair, I think so too. We agree on that. Now consider what I will be going through, perfectly healthy. Getting cut open and an organ removed to help someone else live. How many of you in my place would be willing to do what you were asking me to do? Raise your hand. The 3 women's hands shot up my 2 sons a few seconds later, and hesitantly James's hand. So you'd all be willing to do what you want me to do. They looked at each other, nodding. Then we have the makings of a deal that will help the Kidney Foundation too. On one day, Andrea and I will donate kidneys, 1 to Karen and 1 of the transplant program. And when I come out of surgery, James goes in to donate a kidney to the foundation as well. When that happens, Karen gets my kidney, I get custody of Karen. What did we say, 15% of the time? That seems fair to us all. How's that sound? You 2 will be written up in the paper as heroes. James saw a distinction. You take credit for it all. What's credit to me? You can say it was your idea. You're all the more noble because your donation is going to strangers, not to kin. Everybody nodded. They were good with it, but James didn't look all that happy. I gave him a verbal poke. You okay with this, Jim? He quickly put on his public happy face mask. Sure, it's a good thing to do. And it helps lots of people. So why not? Andrea. They all smiled and nodded. Andrea gushed. Thank you, Jeffrey, you don't know what this means to me. You're wrong about that. Andrea, I do know what this means to you, in fact, more than you realize. But we all agree that Andrea, James, and I will donate a kidney, nodding all around, okay? So here's the contract for you all to sign. There is a penalty clause on the next to last page, which is my second condition. And Andrea and James have to initial it and date it. James got serious in a hurry. What the hell is this about a contract? We all family here, that's not called for. And I, for one, won't sign my replacement was grating on my nerves. The pomp is prick. We're all a family here, Jimmy. Only like the interlocking Olympic rings, different families. My wife and are a family, and you, Andrea, and the children are a family, and the children, Andrea and myself, are a biological family, so the family bid is sort of muddled. Then the nice thing about contracts is everybody knows what they are agreeing to in advance, and the penalty clause if for any reason either of you cannot or will not donate a kidney. Heather and I get custody of Karen. She takes my last name, and the custody figures, which we all agreed were fair reversed. We get her 85% of the time, you get her 15% of the time. Of course, we lee into this, but if one of you were nigs, she'll be registered in the spring for school in Chesterton pandemonium. I had to raise my voice, people, if you all go through with the deal. You get what you all agreed was exactly what you all felt was fair, only if one of you chess. Do I get custody of just one mind, you just one of my 4 children, letting not be greedy here? Andrea spoke up. We'll take it, Karen laughs. That is the big thing here. It's what we all want. It's win-win. She grabbed a pen and signed James Bode. So, Jeff, what happens if you don't go through with it? Andrea and I donate kidneys. You do nothing and Karen dies. I smiled. Good thinking. Jimmy, of course I come out of surgery before you go in, but there might be a problem of some sort. Here's a letter from the Kidney Foundation that in return for 2 kidneys donated to the foundation, they will put Karen at the head of the list, but you have my word, I will go through with it. What more assurance can I give? But my word. Andrea was melting down. Sign it, James, for our daughter's sake. James was hesitant. I'm not sure she's. Andrea jumped on him. Shut up. There's no good way to finish that thought. Sign the goddamn thing. A week later, Andrea went under the knife, and as soon as the surgeon took a piss and changed his scrubs, they cut into me after I came out of the anesthetic in the ICU. They moved me to a private hospital room. Heather had been with me in the ICU, but as soon as I was settled in the private room, she and Macy came in talking with each other. I got an update on Andrea and Heather telling me the doctor said I was fine. Macy looked me in the eye and told me she regretted how James and Andrew had tried to demonize me, Dad. It was like some kind of almost cult thinking, like a sacrifice we needed to make for the future. I mean, it's stupid on the face of it now, but we were kids, and James and Mom they were all on a different planet. She started crying. I'd hold you in my arms and hug you, but I'm not up to it at the moment. Heather was right there. I can hug you, Macy. I forgive you and your dad as well. Come on, you were a kid then, and you did what you could, but in the future, Jeffrey and I want you to be an integral part of our life. My son Mike came in the door at that point. Good, you're awake. I'm going to donate a kidney too. I signed up for it while you were under James bailed. By the way, he's postponed it into the indefinite future, but it'll never happen. Gee. Mike, I don't know. Is that such a good idea? You've got your whole life ahead of you. I don't know. You don't have to. You know, the deal is done. Your kidney doesn't let Jimmy off of the hook. That had nothing to do with it. Karen gets to live with you guys. That's all to the good. I think Karen will be better off. I just gave my word. I said I'd do it. I mean, if my mother and my father could do it. And it is a good thing to do. You know, I've been watching Karen suffer, and as I understand it, they may be able to split my kidney and help 2 people. You had Jimmy figured out, didn't you, Dad? You knew he wouldn't go through with it, and he absolutely hates to be called Jimmy. We'd get grounded for 2 weeks calling him that. Heather was looking at me as it dawned on her how I engineered this thing. I figured he wouldn't give anybody a pound of flesh, but I didn't want to admit it. But better yet, he would be the goat for Andrea losing her daughter. I really don't know Jimbo at all, never laid eyes on him until a week ago. He does seem like a bit of a stuffed shirt. He's not one of us, is he, Dad? You tell me he may be nothing to me, but I rather think he loves you too. That week began the rest of my life at first. When we had Karen for the weekends, one of her brothers or her sister would bring her down, and often enough the 2 of them would stay the day returning in late evening, and the wife or I would take her home Sunday. Pretty soon we had them Karen and whoever drove her down for the whole weekend. When that all went well, we went to Thursday night to Sunday night often enough. I had my friend's boat, so we sailed and fished and swam all summer. We took Karen and her sister on vacation, seeing the sights of Washington, D.C., and then took the boys on the same tour. We extended the trips an extra day because we couldn't get the kids out of the Smithsonian. At the end of summer, Andrea came down with Karen. The two of us chatted. She was more relaxed and happy than I could ever remember. Heather gave us some time together. Jeffrey, James and I aren't getting along well, don't you? No, actually, I didn't. Heather and I are going great, though. Maybe you ought to chat with her? You guys must have done something right in years past. The kids turned out well. James hasn't really done much in the parenting department. He was more of an older playmate than a father. Yeah, well, I guess it put a lot on you in the help from the little I've seen of him. He's not one for sacrifice and hard work. Well, with enough money, you can sit around and fritter your time away, I guess. Did you intend to drive a wedge between us, Andrea, when you bailed on me? You didn't give two shits about me, and now I really didn't give a thought to you, first of all. I wanted Karen to live a normal life. And secondly, I wanted my children back in my life. I am willing to share, but I resented greatly that you yourself would not. More than the divorce, I resented that. Well, that's all water under the bridge. I'm good with it now. So what's your problem with him? Am reneging? I lost Karen, my baby, and now he's cheating on me too. I damn near choked, which morphed into a chuckle in the look on her face. I started. Hearty laughter, you worthless witch. You were happy enough when you were cheating on your husband and denying him his children, weren't you? You really expect sympathy from me? Turnabout is fair play. Well, believe me, I really do know how you feel and agree. No one should have to give up a child. Better line up a good divorce lawyer. You'll still be rich, or is there a prenup? She started to laugh too. Jeffrey, you can get me laughing. Yes, Turnab, but is justice? But justice doesn't feel good for my end. There is a prenup, but yes, I'll be rich, but not happy. That last bit is on you. Somewhere along the line, you missed an essential fact of life you have to find out what makes you happy, and then find someone who will enable you to do whatever it is that makes you happy. Only you can figure it out and make it happen. So what if James is not the man? Cut your losses and develop an exit strategy. Do what you did last time. Start looking, and when you find someone to be with you, someone to help you through the divorce, at least dump your second husband and marry your third. You're well preserved. Skinny is still in fashion. You've got money. You play golf, tennis, and probably still great in bed. What are you lacking, seriously? Give Heather a call. Whatever she did when her husband left her worked for her. She can at least calm and endure it with you more than I can. I started laughing again. I couldn't help myself. Andrea left in late afternoon later. Heather, Karen, and I walked into town for supper and back home that night in bed. I told Heather about our conversation. So you told her James was just doing to her what she did to you. That wasn't nice. And she stifled a laugh. You think she was making a run at you. That's an old-time phrase, isn't it? Make a run at you? Don't be silly. She sees how happy I am, how much you and I love each other. Besides, I told her to talk with you, that whatever you did after your divorce worked out fine for you. She can rot in hell for all I care. I went on to tell her how much I love you, Heather, and I had as grand a time that night as one could have, and not wait. Karen Andrea eventually moved to Florida and invited us all there for Thanksgiving. She had the dinner catered, and it was awful, at least by home cooking standards. Thereafter, the children alternated going there at Christmas and New Year's at our place, and we all got together for a grand 4th of July picnic in Chestertown. The children did keep in touch with James, and to be fair, he took care of them financially myself. I only saw James twice after that, once for Macy's marriage and again at Michael's marriage when Jason married Edward. We held the service in Chester. James didn't reply to the invitation, but to his credit, he sent them a check a couple of weeks later. Oh, and Andrea, she spent a fortune on surgery over the years to sort of keep her looks, but surgery does nothing to make you beautiful inside. In a few short years, she became bitter and envious. The children decided that rather than all visit her, they'd take turns having her visit their houses for the various holidays. That way, the kids figured, as each took their turn in the barrel, none of them had to see her all that often. They tell me she's had a long string of lovers, but none stuck around for long. Not been a happy life for her, me and mine. I'm good.